Hello, everybody. I'm on with Jake Bohal. He is one of the co-founders of Hive Digital. Thank you so much, Jake, for being on the show.
Hey, thanks, Lucas. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, definitely. It's great getting a chance to meet you, especially because it's very comparable type agency to the one that I started, focusing predominantly a lot on SEO. We were having a great conversation before we started rolling here about how your agency scaled, all the many things you had to do to get to this point. And you mentioned that you guys have had years where you were able to get to $10 million in revenue, but you guys are between 7 and 8 figures right now, correct?
Yeah, we're growing. So every time you have an agency, there are years that you expand, years you contract. Fortunately, the last like 3 to 5 years have been really fantastic for us. So we
Yeah.
haven't quite hit that 10 mil number yet, but we hope to within the next year or two at least.
Well, definitely rooting for you. You were mentioning to me a little bit about the past updates to Google search, the Penguin update being one in particular. You guys have been around for a bit, right? It's been 13 years, I want to say, right from your LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I've been with Hive Digital since like 2008, I think was my official like hire date. I was a customer
Oh,
for like
wow.
a
Okay.
year or two before then. But the agency was actually started in 2002. So
Okay.
our agency is almost 20 years old at this point.
Wow. That's awesome. So, yeah, you really were one of the OGs. And you said it's been steady growth predominantly for the last how many years would you say? Like that happy, steady growth you were talking
But
about?
last 5 or 6 years have been fantastic.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I guess let me give you the mic and I'll let you share a little bit about what Hive Digital does.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so Hive Digital, we're a full service digital marketing agency. We focus mostly on analytics, paid search, and SEO. The general premise is we want to be able to measure the impact that we're having and trying to have. We leverage paid search for quick ROI, quick return on data, and then SEO obviously is more of the longer term strategy. So we have a constant effort of measure, optimize, and we just keep that cycle going.
Yeah.
Our agency, I think one of the things that sets us apart from other agencies is our desire to focus specifically on companies that we feel are impact organizations. So businesses we feel are changing the world to be a better place, which is a really fancy way of saying like something I can go home and brag to like my toddlers about,
Yeah.
and like feel comfortable like that, they're going to be excited and that, they think that is a hero.
Right. So with that being said, when did you start adopting that mission? Was that been the mission since day one, or did you kind of lean into that over time?
No, that was not, day one, the mission is, earn money,
Yeah.
pay the bills, don't close the doors. In 2015, 2016, we sort of had like one of those crucible moments. As a company, we changed leadership, we rebranded as Hive Digital. At the time, we were Angular, so like OG company. We were Verante.
Hmm.
Funny story, the business, we had a serious reduction in leads because Moz, we were the 5th company that Moz ever recommended as an
Hmm.
agency. Moz decided to alphabetize their list in like 2010 or 12, somewhere along there. So we became Angular. So we took the old yellow pages model of optimization for search. And so we popped right back to the top of the list over at Moz. And then in Angular JS was breaking out. So we had a kind of a twofer going there.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, we sort of came to the conclusion that the executive leadership, we were struggling with some concepts in terms of like some of the clients that we were representing. The CEO at the time, we had some challenges there. And so we transitioned to Hive Digital. So we wanted to be a company with a purpose. Quite frankly, at the time, I was debating whether I wanted to just leave the agency as a whole and like go work for an NGO and education.
Yeah.
And so we all sort of brainstormed. And we were like, that's dumb. We all love what we do. We just don't like
Right.
the clients that we have. So we're like, you know what? We're gonna stay the course, and we're just gonna shift focus to like now we've got like a process where we like interview internally on what clients, when we have like a lead pool, like the sales team comes in and says like, hey, we've got company A and company B, that we're wanting to send proposals to. What do you think? And everybody kind of gets to vote on whether or not we even want to work with that company.
Right.
So we've got like our competitive things that we, like we don't want to compete with two companies in the same industry, blah, blah, blah. And then we sort of have like our moral ethical compass that, we apply as, is this Marie Kondo, I think, is this client going to bring me joy? And if so, let's do it.
Do you mind me asking how much you guys charge on a regular basis? And if not a specific number, can you give me a range?
Yeah. So, I mean, our average client is between that like $5,000 and $15,000 a month retainer level. Our hourly rates are about $250 an hour. It kind of depends. Like, we'll make exceptions for companies that are having a larger impact in the world. Like, there's some, like we work with like Human Rights Foundation, and like obviously like their bill's much more friendly than somebody that is more focused in the profit, building profits and share prices.
Yeah, and if with that $15,000 high end, is that the highest you guys have gone, or do you guys have some clients that are way bigger?
No, we have 6-figure a month clients as well that we work.
Wow,
with.
so you guys really have moved heavily up market.
Yeah, it's funny enough, we always had a very large, like as an agency, we've always had like a very large client. In fact, one of our biggest pain points and scaling the company was adjusting for that, and how much reliance we have on that top end client base that we had. So our objective now is that no one client is more than like 20 to 30% of our revenue, just so that we've got.
So these are big. These are big clients that you have with the monthly expenditure.
Yeah, some of them, I mean, we do a lot, as an agency, like for example, with one of these really large clients in particular, we help them run their digital department. So, and this doesn't include like their ad spend, like that's all separate. That's just their agency fees. And we're looking specifically at, we manage their dev team for sprints around SEO. We coordinate with their like affiliate marketing team and like just like how we leverage that for SEO efforts. We run their content strategy, and not just like, oh, here's some articles that you should write, but I mean, we literally manage their like resource center. Like we have autonomy on like a very large section of their site. We drive like video content creation, podcast creation, articles, white paper, like you name it. So like, I mean, we're putting in 300-400 hours a month, on like, for example, this one particular client.
And would you say that when you go up that high in terms of their monthly rate, how do your margins change? Have you been able to maintain pretty good margins, or do you guys typically do like a rate reduction as they go higher? Is it something like you pay $100,000 versus $50,000 and we'll knock off 10%, or how do you guys get people to pay that higher amount?
You know what? I think the best way to describe it is like we typically have like an hourly rate that we shoot for internally. Like we have the like 200 to 250 an hour range that we want to hit for our senior level SEO consultants. On the low side, we're looking at like 100, 150 an hour for like more of our entry level consultants in terms of like a billable rate. And so like as our clients have scaled in their budgets, generally like our margins scale with it.
Right.
One of the things that we learned a long time ago was that just because somebody asks more of you doesn't mean that they should pay you any less. In fact, it works quite the opposite, because as you take on a larger client, as an agency, you are taking on a much larger risk. And so, quite frankly, oftentimes that margin needs to be comparable to the risk that you take and the profits that you need to set aside to take care of your team if that client were to ever go away.
Right. And how does help us out here, because I think a lot of the agency owners listening to this podcast, they struggle with margins mainly because like some actually make good margins, but I think where people most struggle with is understanding what comprises your gross profit and your net profit. I'm just curious, because you're a healthy scaled agency that takes on massive clients. How do you look at that? I mean, do you guys target like a gross profit percentage of 30% per month and then a net profit percentage of 15% per month per client? Or like, how do you break that down? And what should agencies shoot for as well, I think?
I mean, I think, our goal, our target gross is going to be 50%. Our goal is that, the majority of our cost is labor. Like everybody is work from home. We have some office, some overhead for equipment and so forth. But generally we want to shoot that every person in our agency is earning twice their salary. Because that gives us the opportunity to flex, to save, and that sort of stuff. So for us, like we're targeting a gross of 50%. That's not always going to be the case. I mean, once you have a client that pays you, $100,000 a month, like you're in this, for us, like our retainer that we set up is generally like a lot more flexible. So like 1 month we might do 400 hours, 1 month we might do 300, 1 month we might do 500. And so like, we tend to look at it like over the life of the contract or over the life of the account. And so like we want to hit 50%. We shoot for that. We generally don't make it. We're generally more like, that 30 to 40 is where we're gonna actually end up. And then, obviously net margin, what we're hoping for is, like you said, like that 15% mark.
Right.
We do still need to go out and, market our agency and do our own, R&D, which costs money. And I will say that I think that's one of the, you had mentioned Penguin earlier. One of the joys of link building, when that was a core staple of our business, was that it provided significant funding for R&D. And it's something that you're selling, right? It's like a commodity. Yeah. So, like your ability to scale that is much easier at times than service level consulting, where, I only have so many hours that I can put out. And so like to scale the time, you have to hire against it when it's in consulting. And so like part of that, need to hit that gross on 50 is because we know that we're actually only going to work, target only going to work like 80% like of our utilization for an employee. So like, we want to try to keep 20% open for things like time off, sickness, like scaling for, flexing in, one-off projects and that type of thing. But ultimately we have to have the funding to set aside for that extra 20% of our time that we don't get billed at all.
So one thing I'm really curious about too, just because it's so interesting, you guys are able to get these retainers this high, is how long does it usually take you to get a client from $10,000 a month to $100,000 a month? Or are these clients you literally just brought on and you've said, okay, it's $100,000 a month?
Yeah, I wish I could just land a 6-figure a month contract. No,
yeah.
And if anybody has that, you had mentioned if there's anything I need to, if anybody has 6 figures a month, they want to just hire out of the gate, I'll take it. Provided everybody else agrees. Now, actually, this client, and in fact, I think every client that we've ever gotten to 6 figures a month has like started out at like that 5K mark. And, we've just been like this, I could think of pretty much every client that we've ever had that has grown that significantly. We started out with either doing like an audit or, like some sort of like initial dating period where the retainer was that 5 to 15 mark. And then we just saw success. And after like a year or two of doubling somebody's company, like they start to give you like, what do you need? Like, like, if you can double me with this budget, what would you do if I doubled your budget? And the other part of that is that, oftentimes, as an agency, you need to also remember that as a company grows, like their demands on you are going to be more complex. There's going to be more work for you. And so we made a mistake a long time ago. Like we would get a client for like $5,000 a month. And then like that was their number forever. Or we would like sign them on at, $150 an hour. And then, 3 years later, we're now like as much as we love working with them, it actually costs us more money to work on their account than it does for the new ones coming in at $250 an hour. So, we try to just be very real with our customers. And, when their growth doubles, then we ask them like, hey, will you double our retainer? Because like we just doubled your revenue. So, like as a percentage of your revenue and your investment in SEO, like we feel like, that should come back to us. And you should trust us that, we're going to work with that budget.
So is it mainly a utility based upsell on hours or based on performance, where you say we can't work more hours unless you pay us more? Or is it we did this much, we give you this many results, let's up the budget? How do you typically
Yeah,
approach it?
yeah. Most of the time it's utility, and so what ends up happening is that as you find success for your clients, and you get more ingrained in their process, like they rely on you more heavily, and then you need more, right? So like
Hmm.
we had one client recently. We have done a great job with them in the U.S. markets, and things have grown, and then we're like, okay, we want to set up a system for translations. We want to pursue like the APAC markets and EMEA markets. So, we need, if you double our budget, then we'll take 50% and apply in APAC, 50% and apply it in EMEA. And let's see what happens. And then obviously like off we go. And like, we need more hours for that because we're going to have to work with more consultants,
Right.
localization experts and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it is almost always an increase based off of the time that we put in. We've done performance-based engagements in the past, and it's hit or miss. We also like, and it's generally we do everything as much as we can hourly, just because we've seen too many times where you set a retainer, like somebody's going to get screwed, and generally it's the agency or it's the client. In our case, it was almost always the agency, because we want to see them be successful. And if we're, running at, a certain retainer level for like flat fee, not retainer. If we're setting like a flat fee for a particular service, like, we're going to do it until it's successful. And we just really sucked at knowing, like 3 months from now, like, what this project's going to look like. And so
Right.
we said, 2-month out clauses, we set a retainer, and then we get to work, and it's our job to keep you as a client and make you want to invest more in us.
I love this. Well, just because I don't want to keep you on the horn forever, but I think there's like a million other questions I could probably ask you. Just wanted to focus on the end here on some questions about maybe you and your goals for the company over the next 12 months. I think, again, if one of the surveys I typically do with agencies who have scaled is, what your growth goals are. And I'll tell you, it's been interesting because, if you were to listen to 100 different SaaS founders on a podcast, they'd probably all tell you, we're trying to grow, we're trying to double, we're trying to triple next year. We're going to go raise our Series A. It's just all about growth, right? But what's really interesting about agencies is like, definitely there are some agencies who are all about growth, but the trend is just profit, profit, profit. And that way I can have a business that I can either hand down to my kids or I can, just keep around forever. It's been a more general theme, but I am always like interested in people who have alternate opinions on it. So I'm curious, like, what your goals are for the company. Is it the same as most people, or is it like I'm looking to grow 20-40% next year?
Yeah. So, I don't think that my partners and I have like an exit strategy in mind. So like, the idea of like, we have to hit these numbers so that we can sell or raise funds, like we're not there. It's not on our radar. Certainly we want to grow. We want to increase revenue. We want to provide more opportunities. In fact, I was just recently telling someone, like, up until like this past year, all of our sales have been like inbound. Like, we just built a reputation. Customers love us. They refer us new clients. We have a couple of strategic partnerships that refer business to us. And that's it. And so we're actually in the process of hiring a salesperson. If you know anybody, let us know.
I definitely can put some intros together. Yeah.
We're in the process of trying to hire a salesperson because we would like to be more outbound. And like, we know that that is the next phase of growth for our company. But for as long as I've been here, our primary goal has been to create a healthy environment for our employees. And that means, like I said, 80% like utilization is like the target, so that people aren't overworked or tired. Our goal is that this job sustains my life and my lifestyle that I want to live, and that of my employees. And if they want to pursue more revenue, like they can help bring in more clients and build a team with them, and I'm happy to support them and pay them commiserate for all of their effort and bonus and so forth. But ultimately, like, we're just sort of riding our success and enjoying the ability to like have fun doing something we love, working on clients that we like. So I would say we're on the latter side of where you're talking. I want to be able to retire. And, you know, this company continue to pay my salary when I'm retired. Like that's my, like, if I can accomplish that, like I've won.
Right.
You know, if
I love that. I love that. That is just so interesting because I'm actually a software developer, so like I actually am interested in the SaaS model, but it's interesting because you gotta put your different hats on because like
mm-hmm.
when I'm running my marketing agency, I'm just thinking, okay, let's just build a great company, let's have extremely good margins, let's do really well for our clients, and let's just scale like at a constant pace. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like the piggy bank to fund anything else. But then when I put my SaaS hat on, I'm like, okay, let's just grow like crazy and just build a crazy product, you know?
It's funny because our agency grows the way that we try to convey to our clients is like the ideal, like organic SEO, like slow and steady wins the race. You know, if you obviously you can win keywords and we can win big clients and see spikes in revenue. But long-term, we're focused on sustainable growth and not stepping backwards at any point in time. And we've played with like as an agency, we've been like, hey, let's build some. We built like Remove 'em, In Topic, Panda. Like we've built SaaS tools, and I've got like another project that we're working on. Because like, as an agency, like we want to have SaaS tools to create that type of revenue, and like that's where we have felt that type of growth potential lives. But like inside of the agency, as a marketing agency, I haven't seen a company that could scale, especially with SEO, a company that could scale and still deliver for their clients the way that they need. Most of the ones that have scaled huge have done a ton of link building, then they're creating a footprint, then they're getting busted, and then they get crumbled. So it's either that or like in paid search, right? Where you can like you build a tool that does it itself.
I mean, it's a saturated market. You know, it's like it's SEO. I mean, like there's 1,000 SEO companies and we're one of them, right? You are too. It's like there's so many. So you have to like, it is hard to grow rapidly. And also you're dealing with one-on-one solutions as opposed to one-to-many. It's like, you know, I have to meet with you or somebody else, and you have to do one every time, as opposed to SaaS, which is 1 to 1,000, 1 to 10,000. You know, so
I love being a boutique firm. I like we get to know our clients, their process, and like a lot of what we do, instead of like a client coming in and like, here's our system, and like we sort of like plug you at the beginning, and then out you pop at the end. Our process is more about learning how your organization structures and how we can make SEO a part of your DNA, so that it's always there's always growth and there's always like a mindset for how can this influence organic with all of the other things that they do.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great interview. Thank you so much, Jake. And I would say definitely we should talk offline about the software thing. I'm curious to see what you guys are working on there. But just to kind of wrap it up here, we usually do some rapid fire questions for the audience, just benchmarking type stuff. But how old are you?
I'm 37.
37. And you said 13 or 20 years is how old the agency has been around.
Yeah, I started with Hive. I think my hire date was July of 2008. So
so you were 17.
No, 2008.
Oh, 2008. That's it.
It's 25, I think.
25. Nice.
Yeah, 25.
Nice. That's awesome. Any book recommendations, business book recommendations for anybody?
Yeah, I'm scaling up. I think is fantastic, especially for an agency trying to grow. Really gets rid of a lot of the wasteful efforts that you put in place.
It definitely does. I love that book too. We already went over what your goal is. It sounds like it's to harvest the business, not sell it. But what would you value your agency at today? Would you value it on like revenue, or would you value it on EBITDA, and what would the multiple be for either of those metrics? Like, just curious.
You know what? That's a great question. I don't know the answer.
Or just I guess for other people, like how would you? Do you typically base it on like
I would do a multiple of revenue typically, but I think it's messed up generally to do that to an agency, because I know that an agency's value is almost always in its employees, right? So like there's this idea of like, oh well, if you have contracts for $3, $4, $5 million a year worth of contracts, like we could do a multiple. But if the employees leave, like those clients are going with them. Like you have to have the talent to sustain that. So I have not sold an agency. I have no desire to sell an agency. So I haven't given that a ton of thought.
Yeah.
I at some point would like to buy like a dev shop. Like that is on the list of to dos, is like a design dev shop, just because we get so many like of the
Yeah.
small businesses that like they just need a new site, and it's a pain. It's a pain.
To
It's
do,
just
yeah.
painful always.
Have you heard of MicroAcquire?
No.
You should check them out. It's like this
Cool.
really cool buying and selling of businesses of all types. So I actually I'm on there quite a bit, just looking at new opportunities and stuff. But yeah, man, thank you so much. Thank you, Jake. And it's been a great having you on the show. I guess if there happens to be any agency owners that work with nonprofits or world changing companies, hit Jake up and go to hivedigital.com. That's where you can get in contact with Jake and the team. But thank you so much, Jake. And it's been a pleasure. And hopefully we can have you on the show sometime in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Lucas. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
All right,
Bye.
cheers.